Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're taking a shortcut through a stack of sources that really challenge everything you might think you know about the creatures sharing your sofa. We are diving deep into the metaphysical life of animals.
That's right. We're not just talking about, animal psychology or behavior. We are probing their energetic existence.
Right.
And the claims we're analyzing, they come from a specific, sometimes controversial investigative protocol. It's often called the Grifasi method.
Right, involving deep hypnosis.
Exactly. Using deep hypnotic regression to explore the subconscious and these energetic fields. And the information that comes out suggests animals have souls. They carry karmic weight, and they maintain these really complex, often unbreakable bonds with their human companions.
So our mission today is kind of twofold, right? First, we want to extract those surprising, maybe profound nuggets about animal consciousness from these sources.
Yeah.
But second, and this is crucial, we have to hold up the critical framework that the sources themselves provide. Because if we're looking at info gathered this way, well, we need to understand the caution required.
Absolutely. It's key context.
Yeah.
So let's start with the big one. Do animals possess consciousness like we do?
The foundational question.
And the sources say, well, yes. Animals possess their own consciousness, but, and this is a big but, it's incredibly diverse. It's structured differently across species, very complex.
And they make a comparison to human consciousness that's,
Well,
it's quite revealing.
they do. Human consciousness is often described in these sessions as being more contaminated.
More contaminated, wow.
Yeah, it kind of points to our own constant mental chatter, maybe.
Yeah.
But while individual animals have their specific consciousness, metaphysically speaking, the sources suggest they all tap into this massive collective awareness.
Like a shared pool.
Sort of. Think of it like a giant shimmering energy pond, or maybe a shared energetic watering hole. Animals gather there energetically, not physically, to swap memory codes and draw pure energy.
Okay, so there's this collective wellspring. But what about the individual animal? You mentioned they're blocked from full self-awareness.
Right. While they're in the physical body, the description is that they're generally blocked from achieving full self-awareness in the moment. They live, they experience, they gather data, store it.
But the analysis comes later.
Exactly. The full analysis, the realization of what it all meant, that only happens, supposedly, when the soul leaves the physical body.
Okay, but that immediately makes me think. We see amazing intelligence. Dolphins recognize. How does that fit?
That's a fair question. The sources tend to categorize those behaviors as demonstrations of specialized physical capacities or logical abilities almost programmed into their DNA.
Like instinct, but more complex.
Perhaps, or maybe it's a post-mortem analysis of facts they gathered, drawing on abilities stored deep within. The full self-reflection on the meaning, though, that seems reserved for the non-physical state.
Okay, that starts to build a picture of their place in the bigger energetic cycle. So if they're collecting experiences and analyzing later, does that mean they reincarnate? Do they have karma?
According to these sources, absolutely. Animals are fully part of the cycle of births. They use this simple metaphor, a string of beads, one life following another.
A string of beads, I like that. And what's really interesting is the idea that they don't have to stick to one species, right?
Correct. That's a key difference sometimes noted compared to human cycles. They can switch. A dog might become a bird. A horse could become a cat in the next life.
Why? Is there a reason given for that?
Yeah, the main reason given is to gain different perspective, different experiences, and, crucially, to understand the consequences of their actions from a previous life.
So like learning what it feels like to be on the receiving end.
Exactly. If an animal was, say, aggressive, maybe the next life involves experiencing vulnerability. It broadens that whole idea of karmic learning beyond just punishment and reward. It's about experience.
It really does. It sounds purely experiential. So how does this connect to us, to the human side, these bonds we feel with our pets?
Well, the sources are very clear. Energetic bonds and karmic ties definitely exist between specific humans and their animals. That deep connection you feel.
Yeah.
It's not just, affection or habit. It's described as a tangible, energetic link, constantly exchanging memory codes.
Memory codes. So that explains that feeling of instant recognition sometimes.
That's the idea. That sudden, intense feeling you might get with a new pet, or even a neighbor's animal you barely know, that I know you feeling. That could be the memory code activating, recognizing an old soul companion.
Wow. Okay, so in this life, What does that bond mean for the pet's awareness? Are they just, chill on the couch, or are they tuned into our stuff, our
Only
stress?
if they're tuned in.
Yeah.
Deeply. A pet is described as being keenly aware of its owner's emotional state, big life events, even potential threats.
Threats? Like what?
Well, they might not understand why you haven't paid the rent. They don't grasp mortgages or bills. But they absolutely feel the consequences. They feel your fear, your anger, the stress when, say, a bailiff shows up or the power gets cut. They react to that energy.
And this next part really blew my mind from the sources that awareness carries forward.
It does. The memory of that stress, that consequence, can be so profound that a future incarnation of that same pet might try to warn the owner about similar recurring threats.
Oh.
Through strange, insistent behavior. Like maybe your dog starts barking frantically at the mail carrier only when a certain type of bill arrives, one that caused huge stress in a past shared life.
So the dog doesn't know it's a bill, but it's acting on this energetic memory.
Exactly. An instinct driven by those past life memory codes. The physical body doesn't get the why, but the soul memory triggers the action.
Okay, let's shift a bit. Animals as energetic conduits can. Can other things, outside forces, interact with us through our pets?
The sources say yes, they can. They describe entities or external consciousnesses, sometimes using an animal's body. Not full possession always, but like a co-occupant or just looking in for a moment to interact with the human.
Okay, we need to define a term here for you, the listener. The source material calls these external consciousnesses, whether their intent is good or bad, ingrants. How do these ingrants use a pet?
Well, the entity leverages the animal's physical abilities.
Yeah.
Sudden movements, weird staring, barking at nothing. But the intent behind the action isn't the animal's, it's external.
Why use the pet?
Often because the human trusts that animal implicitly. The endurant targets that trust bond as an easy way in, a way to influence or pass a message, which could be a warning or just as easily misinformation.
So the advice is crucial here. If your pet does something truly bizarre, totally out of character, especially if it seems dangerous,
You need to use reason immediately. Question the action. Don't just blindly follow or assume the animal knows best in that specific strange moment.
protect your own field, and by extension, theirs.
Precisely. Okay, now we often hear about cats and energy work. Do these sources offer an energetic reason for that?
Yeah, the whole cats are psychic thing.
Right. Well, within this framework, cats are often mentioned as effective conduits, especially, it seems, for lower vibration entities or indrants.
Why cats specifically?
It's described in terms of their color temperature or their vibrational compatibility. It supposedly makes them energetically comfortable or less abrasive for these entities. This doesn't imply the cat itself is low vibration, mind you.
So their energy field is just easier to interact with.
Less aggressive, maybe, less defensive than a typical human energy field might be perceived by an indrant.
So the cat can become like an energetic neutral ground?
Kind of. One scenario described is a cat acting like a spare door. An entity might be trying to leave a human's energy field, but the human is consciously or unconsciously fighting it off.
Okay.
So the entity sees the cat's field as less combative, an easier escape route. It uses the cat to exit the vicinity without actually harming the cat.
An escape hatch. Well, okay, let's tackle maybe the most difficult claim here. Pets absorbing our suffering, even our illnesses.
Yeah, this is a heavy one. It seems to happen in layers. First, just through that strong energetic connection, that thread between them and us, animals naturally mirror and absorb our emotions, our sadness, anger, stress. They feel our vibrations directly.
That makes intuitive sense. But the sources go further, don't they?
They do, much further, describing a potential for a conscious, intentional transfer, the ultimate sacrifice, as it's sometimes put.
Where the animal chooses to take on a human illness or some major energetic issue.
Yes. And this isn't random. It's based on what the sources call a conversation of souls, a pre-agreement, or an agreement in the moment on a soul level.
But why would an animal agree to that?
The motivation described is primarily assistance, love, and the understanding of reincarnation. The animal knows its physical lifespan is much shorter than the human's, maybe 12 years versus 80.
So it's calculation almost.
In a way. By taking on the illness, sacrificing its current body, it gives the human partner a chance to continue their life experience, their journey. And the understanding is that the bond is so strong, they will find each other again. Reunion is expected.
So the animal essentially zaps the illness, which, by the way, is often described in these sources as another kind of interfering entity feeding on the human.
Right.
Takes that hit with its physical body, its soul is freed, and it can reincarnate, maybe even come back to the same owner fairly quickly.
It speaks to an incredible depth of bond, if true. But there's a flip side, a human responsibility.
Which is?
Our grief. Excessive human grief and attachment, while understandable, can apparently negatively affect the animal's soul transition after death. It can hold them back energetically.
So we need to support their journey onward.
Yes. Encourage them to move forward, even through our own pain.
Okay. We spent a good amount of time exploring these really incredible, sometimes difficult claims pets as soul companions, karmic helpers, energetic shields. But now we absolutely must pivot to the context. The how.
Yeah.
How was this information gathered?
Yes. This is probably the most vital part of this deep dive, especially for you, the learner, trying to make sense of this. The source materials themselves include very explicit warnings about the hypnotic research method used.
They're upfront about the limitations.
Very. They stress that the idea of a single, definitive research session giving pure truth, that doesn't really exist in this model.
You can't just have one hypnotic conversation and call it fact.
No way. Real research, according to these protocols, requires rigor. We're talking hundreds, potentially thousands of sessions, different subjects, diverse backgrounds, but asking the same core control questions again and again.
Why so many? Why such intensity?
Because the information obtained during deep hypnosis is considered, by the practitioners themselves, extremely contaminated.
Contaminated, that's a strong word. What are the sources of contamination?
They break it down into two main categories. First is the journey the information takes.
The journey.
Yeah. The information has to travel, so to speak, through multiple energetic dimensions, levels of consciousness, the ether. And along that path, various entities or consciousnesses can, deliberately or not, distort it, twist it, add to it, subtract from it, change the message before it even gets near the subject's mind.
Okay, that's one major filter. What's the second?
The second is the subject's mind itself. The person under hypnosis isn't a blank slate. Their own beliefs, their upbringing, their values, fears, hopes, even their mental structure, it all acts as a filter. It inherently contaminates the information as it's processed and then spoken aloud.
So they're interpreting universal input through their very personal lens.
Exactly. Which means the investigator's goal isn't to collect unique, fascinating stories from each session.
Even though those might be really interesting.
Right. But the vast majority of those unique details, they have to be discarded, considered unreliable for forming broad conclusions. The real goal is to sift through all that noise, all that contamination.
To find what?
To find the tiny, reliable gold nuggets, that's the term sometimes used, bits of information that consistently appear, that are common across almost all the sessions, regardless of the subject.
So consistency is key. Only the repeated data is seen as potentially pointing towards a more objective, energetic reality.
Precisely. Only that shared, repeated pattern is considered reliable enough to build any kind of theory upon.
Okay, so let's try to wrap this up. We've journeyed through some really profound claims today. Our pets, as deeply involved energetic and karmic partners, acting as support systems, even shields. And we've also looked hard at the crucial need for caution, for understanding the methodology and its inherent challenges, its built-in contamination.
Yeah, the context is everything here. And the central lesson, really, whether you accept all, some, or none of the specific claims about, say, illness absorption or species switching, the core idea remains powerful. That the strength of that energetic thread, that bond between you and your animal companion, that dictates the level of exchange. These sources highlight a constant, often unseen conversation happening.
A conversation of energy, of souls.
Yes, and it really demands that we use our reason, our discernment, to understand what's happening with our pets, to tell the difference between their needs, our projections, and maybe, just maybe, external influences.
So here's the final thought for you to take away, something to mull over. If that deep fundamental bond you share with your pet is truly a continuous, evolving energetic connection, one that isn't actually limited by a single lifetime, how does knowing that, or even just considering it, fundamentally change how you perceive their presence in your life right now, and perhaps even more profoundly, how you'll view their eventual passing?
Something to think about.
Definitely. Join us next time for another deep dive.